In an ever-changing world, one of the few things that has remained the same over the course of any period in history is the importance of nature and wildlife. It's no great secret that the way that we're living as a society is a serious threat to our future, with environmental campaigners and activists urging everyone globally to do their bit. As the famous quote reads, "We cannot change the world unless we change ourselves." It's on us as individuals to make steps to help save the planet by taking care of where we call home. And for me, it's Birmingham. In Birmingham, a number of organisations have come together to explore what community engagement in science and the natural world could look like through the Engaging Environments project. Alongside the University of Birmingham and Citizens UK, Earthwatch, an environmental charity with science at its heart, is exploring ways to reverse wildlife decline by working with communities as part of its Naturehood programme. Earthwatch seeks to drive the change needed to live within our means and in balance with nature by connecting people with the natural world. The Engaging Environments project is about bridging the gap between science and communities. We'll be looking at projects across Birmingham which bring people closer to nature.
It's about creating conditions of equality in research and understanding how we can work together and how people inside and outside academia can work together, and where different expertise and has value in the whole system. So for Birmingham, it's of interest to us because the University of Birmingham is a big institution in a big city, and I'm personally interested in how the institution serves this city and the people.
Our journey begins in the south of the city. This allotment here in Sturchley is known as the People's Plot.
So here you can see that we're in a kind of a nice allotment next to a school, kind of just down the road from the River Ray. It's kind of like a green corridor, but if you go to different bits of Birmingham, the green space is very different. You know, you find allotments scattered across the city, and they're normally kind of really beautiful oases of growing food, but flowers and green space, and quite often surrounded by houses. In terms of other green spaces, it does depend on where you live, and if you go to bits of North Birmingham, there's not so many parks as there is in bits of South Birmingham. That's a historical situation, and it's also how those spaces are used varies as well.
Allotments are where holders can plant the likes of trees and flowers, but are also common for growing produce such as fruit and veg.
Nature, wildlife and growing your own food go absolutely hand in hand. If I guess from a starting point is you need pollinators in order for fruit and vegetable to grow. So you need the bees, you need the butterflies, you need all those kind of buzzing insects to actually help produce the food in the first place. So you get the real canny allotment holders know that they interplant their vegetables with their fruit, with the nasturtiums and the other flowering plants that they know are going to bring in not only the pollinators but also the insects that will then eat the bugs and the things that eat the vegetable plants. So it's a great ecosystem kind of happening on an allotment, for example.
So this is the People's Plot, which is a project from Incredible Surplus.
The People's Plot is an area of allotment which is a collaboration between Incredible Surplus, Earthwatch, Fruit Nut Village, Let's Grow Together, with support from the University of Birmingham.
This space, this is the beginnings of our forest garden. So on this site here we'll have a mixture of different edible perennial plants. We've got chives over there, we've got borage, we've got the red callaloo, which is a good self-seeder. The rhubarb only went in a few months ago but it's doing well. We've got mints and different herbs. So this will be developed to the forest garden, and people will be able to come in here and just at any time of year find something edible and useful to take out of there. These vegetable beds, they're made from some scrap wood that we brought in and filled with basically from material from the site, and we'll have a central tree growing there, fruit tree, maybe a nut tree, and the idea of this cable reel is that you'll be able to sit around the edge, sit underneath the fruit tree and enjoy the day. A lot of the community at the site is built through the camaraderie of people working together, and on top of that, a lot of it's built over sharing coffee breaks together and having a bit of food together and a little bit of a chat. Quite a lot of people have come together who didn't know each other before, and over the last 4 or 5 months we've built a real kind of some quite strong friendships, new relationships have built up, and yeah, we have become something of a little community.
The outbreak of COVID-19 and the subsequent restrictions that have come as a result has increased isolation among people across the country. It's never been more important for so many to socialise as and when they can.
You're out in the weather, whatever the weather. We don't just come when it's like this. We've been here absolutely dripping from head to toe. And as I say, they're like-minded people. It's just great to be with people like this. You get out in the open air and gets those endorphins going, so you feel great, you know.
It's not just the food growing, it's the connections that you have with other people on the allotment or the other people in the space, as well as the nutrition that you get from the food.
Recycling is one of the first words that spring to mind when it comes to protecting our environment. But it's not just a case of putting cardboard in a recycling bin here. There's an even bigger issue that they've picked up on.
This is just some of the food we've managed to save this week from Co-op in Moseley.
Statistically, a third of all the food in the world is just binned. So that, you know, imagine just getting your fridge and just taking a third of it out and just throwing it in the bin. The cost, you know, economically is huge, but environmentally, you know, as you see that we, you know, today we collected some pastries from one of the supermarkets in Moseley. So there's individual croissants and other items in plastic. Now, if we hadn't have rescued that food this morning, it would have ended up in landfill. And the pollution that causes is devastating, really. It releases dangerous greenhouse gases. So really, if we eat it, it's going in our bellies, and you know, that's food and fuel.
The supermarkets, I think, are getting a bit more clued up now than they used to be. So a lot of them have projects to try and save what they'd otherwise throw away. And the big part of the problem is that food has use-by dates on it. And as you know from what you buy yourself, often food, particularly best before food, could be fine for another few weeks. We've got melons, potatoes, bananas, aubergines, broccoli, peppers, and we've had loads of pastries, and there are loaves of bread that the volunteers will be able to take home, crisps, and this is actually smaller than we often get every week. So this is just a sample of the food that would have gone into landfill or to waste.
The People's Plot allotment site links into the long-term vision of tackling inequality of access to food by providing an opportunity for those with limited access to growing space and support. From the south of Birmingham to the north, and an area that's had its issues with deprivation. But today, Lozells casts a very different look, and much of it is to do with an initiative launched by Aspire and Succeed back in 2016.
Lozells is a very densely populated area where we did have a lot of fly tipping, and we did have issues on every other street corner. The main reasons why roles of mine came along was to try and empower the residents to do something about it and bring some change. So Lozells in Bloom was our first event that we had at Lozells, where a lot of people that we did not know or we didn't actually meet up with, we found out that they had some fantastic gardens, back gardens, front gardens, and they really wanted to showcase what they had. It was very, very popular on the first year, where we had winners winning prizes and actually having accolades of the cleanest street in Lozells, where many residents took part. We had over 200 participants just for the rear and front gardens.
The winner of the first competition goes by the name locally as Mr. T, but it was more a star instead of a team for him, as he's been responsible for the influx of flowers we see in the area, including this batch here. Ever since moving to the UK from Pakistan, he's been determined to clean up the area that he now calls home.
जिस वेले आए सां 96 विच उस वेले इत्थे काफ़ी रबिश होंदा सी यार बंदा इत्थे रोड ते सड़ दिंदा सी उस तो बाद फिर असां एह सारा टाइडी अप कीता फुल आए फिर साढ़े नाल हेल्प कीती एस्पायर एंड सीड वालियां ने ते असां इंशाल्लाह अल्लाह दे हुक्म नाल हूण जेह्ड़ा एरिया देखो फुल जेह्ड़े लगे न ते असां इस रोड ते नहीं है बाकी रोडां ते भी कीते ने इंशाल्लाह असां मज़ीद आस्ता आस्ता होर इस एरिया च करांगे इंशाल्लाह.
So now we're standing right here on Carpenter's Road here, and this was a very a major issue for us with fly tipping. Mainly two reasons. We've got the residents that live here who thought because this corner is secluded and the property doesn't actually belong to anyone's house, they thought it would be an ideal place to fill this with actual litter. And I mean mattresses, bags, any kind of filth you can find was actually situated here. There was a small council bin that was on this spot or premises, and after a lot of consultation and work, we realised that that bin shouldn't have been here, because that was what was the main reason, was attracting people dropping their rubbish here, knowing that the council will come to empty that bin and clean it, and they'll collect all of the rubbish that was around it. So what we worked out was over the course of a few months, we realised, looking through all the bags, that the rubbish was actually coming from the flats above the shops, because none of them had actually any wheelie bins, none of them had actually any bins in place. Over the time, we had to put that into place with the council. We did some workshops with them. We worked out that to get rid of this bin, we need to actually add something here. What we did is we added these tyres. We have now eradicated that problem permanently.
The Naturehood project is about giving ideas and resources to communities to improve space for wildlife. But it is the communities that are best placed to know what is important and what will work for them.
Using wildlife and taking action for wildlife as a way to bring disparate communities together, but equally as a way to kind of recognise those communities that already work well. It's another thing that they can do, it's another opportunity.
I've always got a passion for the tidiness in the community, and basically just keeping an eye on everything. You know, community is everything to me.
Kabir Hussein's story is an interesting one, to say the least. He voluntarily cleaned up his own streets, something that led him to being offered a job in the council full-time, cleaning up streets across Birmingham.
I was very inspired by that there's more people taking pride in where they're living, and the community is getting together, and that's what's happening now, where the community is involved in a lot of the projects that we're doing around here, and it's nice.
Being able to, you know, plant flowers and make a real effort and be really proud of your community, kind of wildlife, it's a win-win for wildlife, because obviously the flowers are great to look at for people, but you've got all the insects, very happy indeed that everything's in bloom and pulling things together.
So Los Altos in general has improved drastically. The last 3-4 years that we've been carrying on this project, we have over 63 tyres now in place. We've had over 200 hanging baskets that have been put into place in Los Altos. We have strategically placed boxes of flowers. We've had flowers like this behind me all around Los Altos, which has given it a different perception than what we first had on the same street corners that were full of rubbish. We've had waste prevention teams come out and actually been so pleased to say that it's made such a significant difference, especially with the austerities that we've had in the council, especially with COVID-19. It's still a place that looks like you're in a Moseley or Sutton Coldfield. It's absolutely fantastic with what the residents have achieved through partnerships with different agencies, and most of all, we are trying to implement it on other streets, trying to find other champions who will take ownership and bring it to their streets and make sure Los Altos on every street corner is vibrant, has the flowers, has the resources, and make sure environmentally it's safe and it looks pleasing on the eye.
Back over in the south of Birmingham and just a stone's throw away from the Sturchley allotments, Rob and the team are in full flow in building a green space. But this one has a slight twist, as it's deliberately situated in the heart of a general public walkway.
So this is Kingdom Forest Garden, and we've been developing this site over the last 2 years as Fruit and Nut Village Sturchley. The trees originally, the oldest of the trees went into the site about 10 years ago, so they're getting very well established. We're developing it as a forest garden, so we're bringing in fruit bushes and shrubs and other edible plants. We're putting in ground cover plants such as Nepalese raspberries and strawberries, and putting some perennial vegetables into the site as well. So when it's finished, it'll be an edible, productive landscape and a home for nature as well. I think even people who are just passing by and having a little look over their shoulder and seeing what's going on and watching the trees through the seasons, they're getting a lot out of it. There used to just be grass on this site, so it's added a lot of value, a lot of nature value, but also a lot of value to the community.
I will walk along the River Ray quite a lot here, and about 2 years ago I came down here and there was people here with clipboards, and they were doing measuring, and being nosy, I just asked them what they were doing, and they told me, well, Rob told me, and he said, why don't you come and join us? So I thought this would be a good idea. That's how I started.
I spend quite a lot of time working at a desk and staring at a computer, so just coming outside, doing a bit of work outside is really therapeutic for me. And yeah, it's good exercise as well.
I quite like it because it gets me out of the house. I've been retired. I'm on my 10th year retirement now, and so it's really quite good to get a bit of exercise. And the company's good, and the people, very, very nice crew.
I'm very happy that here in Birmingham, it's a lot of people. For them, the nature is very important, and they do wonderful projects here. And I've seen that more and more people is involved in that.
People are very keen to take the fruit. They're very keen to take the fruit they know about. So they'll come and eat raspberries, they'll come and take black currants maybe. They'll certainly take the apples, but what they're not yet sure about is picking times. So the general rule for apples would be that you're looking at picking late September into October, and some of those will store for months beyond. So August in the summer is not the picking time, that's the ripening time.
The community in nature is a very interesting one because I think the black community is very missed about that and our community. Bob Marley said the thing about concrete jungle when he came into this country, and where Bob Marley comes from is a very natural country. Has anybody been to the Caribbean islands? You know, it's just full of natural habitats. So when our parents came over here, and if you live in places in Clarendon and that, you come from the country where we call the bush, which basically you live out there. So my experience of having that from my father, rest in peace, is that he had his allotments here. He continues to take on that traditions, and you find out from the Windrush, a lot of our parents continued to get their allotments and cultivate their own foods. This is part of our DNA. This is part of where we come from. If we go back to Jamaica, we're seeing all natural habitats that you do. You can go on people's land and pick corn, you can pick cocoa, which is made up from the chocolate. You've got mango trees, orange trees, which is cultivated, the land that they cultivate as well, the trees that they plant, the herbs that they have for you to drink and special and medicines to cure people.
Those very herbal remedies and nature traditions from the Caribbean are being brought back to life here in Birmingham, thanks to one man. Marlon is on a mission to improve the health and well-being of the black community and has set up a herbal service, as well as We Go Outside Too, an initiative designed to get more people out in nature.
We Go Outside Too started last year 2020, and it was all to do with like lockdown, and also like dealing with like the passing of my son as well. So like I was going outside more, like in nature, and then it was a thing like I was looking into like statistics regarding like the lack of green space for like people that are deprived areas as well, and it all came up like that we're living in like this concrete jungle.
I've lived all over Birmingham, so up until 7 I lived in Winson Green, and I still visit there now. And the house that I lived in then was a terrace house, no front garden, small backyard. Then moved up to South Birmingham to Bourneville Village Trust. It blew me away. Greenery everywhere, green parks, big front garden, massive back garden. Everything was about being outside. Even my school that I went to, it's all green, it's all fields. Then at 16, I moved back to the north side of Birmingham, Ladywood, back to the same thing, terrace houses, no front garden. Parks, yes, but not enough green space. It's about the home. It's about the home. And I think when I wasn't driving and I used to sit on the number 11 bus, that's when I really started to notice the difference. If you're catching the number 11 from Sally Oak, South Birmingham, and you're going all the way into Winson Green and beyond, you can see the colour outside the window slowly change from green to grey. And it does have a huge impact on, it's just how you are growing up. You know, there's certain things you can do. You can play out in your garden in South Birmingham.
A lot of us are in urban spaces. Urban spaces is filled up with buildings, filled up with space taken up. There is no greenland areas where we can enjoy that nature. Enjoy. Yeah, we have Handsworth Park, which used to be really, really nice and predominantly green, that we could get in fresh air, but there's not many of that outside from your house where you can walk and say, well, actually, this is our nature. Where back in the days, people used to go and pick strawberries, got apple scrumpy, and when they used to pick apples on, those things don't exist, that you can be out in nature, or bird watching. And do you know what I mean? We've kind of lost that since we've been put into these urban spaces that don't facilitate those kind of natural habitats that we evolved in.
It's green in the more affluent white areas as well, where the inner cities, where it's predominantly people of colour, it's not, it's grey, it's packed together. And if we're not having things like youth clubs and community centres, but they haven't got gardens to play in safely, and they haven't got parks where they can go to safely, what are we giving the children that are growing up in those areas? Not just socially to do, but then you start thinking about the health impacts as well. And that's what really drew me to We Go Outside Too from Marlon's mission statement.
It's been very beneficial, you know, in the fact that like it's brought us all together, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like to bring us together and to communicate with one another, also network with each other, and probably like there's people that we would probably walk past in the street that we wouldn't speak to, but like when we like close together in close proximity, we get talking and you find out that person's doing that and then you just connect the dots. So, you know, it's just bringing people together more.
The growing number of young people taking responsibility to protect the future is encouraging, and on a local level, it's no different. For Hashim, the importance of taking care of the environment has been embedded in him from a young age.
So I got into gardening from my parents. My parents have always been gardening from day one, and because it's such a nice thing to do and it benefits the environment, and also because our religion teaches us to always look after the environment, to take care of it. So we've always embedded that into everything we do. This generation, I think, it's very important for us to look after the environment. And you know, I think a lot of people, they don't really take into consideration, and they take everything for granted. But you know, once it's gone, you know, when you have no flowers, and you know, when there's no trees and whatnot, you know, then everything changes.
For Claire, on the other hand, is something that she's picked up and developed a love for.
I've always been interested, but I haven't always been living somewhere that I could make the most of nature. So I lived in London for a long time, and now I'm living in Birmingham, another big city. So it's really great to have somewhere like this that you can come, where you can build a big project like this that I just wouldn't have had an opportunity to do. And there's a real satisfaction from growing food, and I think young or old, you can really enjoy that.
By 2030, there was a whole series of targets that the whole world has been challenged to meet. And basically, the young people today are going to be either the recipients of a really positive planet as a result of those goals, or they're going to be the ones dealing with the challenges that are out there. So everything that we can do now to equip them to think about and to positively think about the environment going forward is just going to be beneficial for everyone.
Just being outside and spending some time, and also just learning about plants and just being immersed in it, I think it really helps my mental well-being.
The correlations between being in nature and preserving positive mental health are striking. According to the mental health charity Mind, spending time in green spaces has been found to help with both anxiety and depression.
There are studies that would show you that there's correlations between access to green space and positive influence on mental health. I mean, access to spaces for exercise or a clean environment, you know, with where air quality becomes a factor.
I know for my own mental well-being, to be outside when we're all, you know, people haven't got jobs, people are getting, you know, worried about being in enclosed spaces. It's perfect really, because you're outside, it's very easy to social distance, you're connecting with the ground. You know, life in the city can be hard, we all walk on concrete, there's pollution everywhere, you know, can be a bit manic. So this is, for me, it's definitely a bit of a haven.
There's a real positive link, both in terms of just being able to spend time in nature, but also how your brain functions differently when you're kind of immersed in nature. We have to be more inclusive. We have to enable everybody to be part of that. And I think traditionally you get some real keen beings who are really focused on environmental issues, and it can seem quite cliquey and quite exclusive. Whereas actually what we need to do is break down some of those barriers and get back to the basics of, you know, what does nature do for us? You know, what is it that nature can give us, and how can we as communities tap into that?
We really need to enter a time of self-sufficiency. If we're at the point where every time we need to do something, we're going to be looking at the system, or what is the system going to do for us in order for us to do something that we know is necessary for ourselves, it's a regressive mentality. We're a people of nature. If you want to continue that and the next generation understand that they're a people of nature as well, like I said, 2 pairs of socks, extra jumper and a flask, and get outside.
I don't think it's important that everybody does it, you know, but I think there should be, if people want to do it, there should be spaces where they can do that in a way that not only it may be good for their own well-being, but also adds that social context. And actually outside these days, we can meet outside. It looks like we're going to have a bit more of an outside world and outside life in the foreseeable months, and maybe even longer. So I think having those spaces and places where people can convene and congregate and do something constructive together is, I think, going to be really important.
I think people are coming to. I think people do recognise that it's important. It's where that sits in what's important to the individual, what's important to you, what's important to me.
It is what's meaningful and what's needed for the community. It is what issues our communities are facing, is why we do a listening campaign, in order to know what the most important needs are from the community. Because it's easy for us to say what we think the community needs. And as many times we've been doing this for too long, and it's not actually what the communities need. But by having a listening campaign, it gives you to know what is it that your community, and plus the community, building the community relationship now becomes stronger because you're listening to those needs of the community.
Everyone's got a role to play in this, and unless we have a level playing field so everyone can be part of that, that's one of the biggest things. I think if we can solve that, if we make communities cohesive and work together and to be really supportive, then the kind of environmental positive action will happen.
So maybe there is hope for our world, and it's equally pleasing to know that here in Birmingham, the importance of preserving our environment remains a priority across the different communities. The transformation in Lascelles is testament to that.
When we were first doing it, it was a bit of a joke to most people. What people have noticed now, I have a list of street corners that people are wanting to put these planters on, taking responsibility and ownership, and we just can't get around. Our volunteers, a very small team of us, are looking for support, looking for people that are willing to come out and volunteer more. If we can grow that, and Lascelles will bloom, not just for the next year, but for many decades to come.
You know, we have to show the rest of the country that the community is the most important thing, and working together. It's nice when everybody gets involved, and especially in Altos and Lascelles, we've got all communities here, and when you see everybody working together, it's nice.